Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Kirtananita Gita Romanchakam Pasu Taranga Vajo Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingaratanama Niramarjanado Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatopi Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad Prasadu Satana Truptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad Prasadu Satana Truptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Kridaiva Trupti Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Shiradikama Vabayarapara Madhura Lila Gunarupanamna Shiradikama Vabayarapara Madhura Lila Gunarupanamna Pratikshana Sa Danalalopasya Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Danalalopasya Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Ne kunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Virjuktir Apekshaneya Nikunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Virjuktir Tatrati Dakshar Ativalabhasya Vande Gurushi Charanaravrindam Vallabhasya Sakchadharitena Shamastashrashre Ruktastatthava Vyataiva Sadhuvi Sakchadharitena Shamastashrashre Kintu pravarja priya eva tasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasadam Nagati kutapi Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasadam Nagati kutapi Jayam stuvam tasya Yasatrin sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Jayam stuvam tasya Yasatrin sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Jayam stuvam tasya Yasatrin sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Deshatarine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Chaitanya Nityananda Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hariyaraye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah Shri Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudam Giridhari Gopina Madana Moham Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Vataraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Baladev, Subhadrama, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman, Sitaram. Nittai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nittai Gaur, Haribo, Nittai Gaur, Haribo, 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 Nittai Gaur, Pramanande, Hari Hari Haribo. Jai Vishwapar Paramhansa Prabhajagacharya Ashtottara Sarasishima. His Divine Grace of Bhajanavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstapakachara Vaishnava Sirmani Gora Priya Jana Krishna Prima Bhakti Data Patita Pav Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varanga Patita Udhar Ki Jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadeta Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Param Dayal Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Premanama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prima Purusha Uttama Shri Sachinandana Shman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavaranaya Avatar Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Yogadharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Prihatmidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopukutna Radha Kun Samakun Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय, तेलो शिव श्री राधा नीला माधव की जय, श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय, परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय, श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु स्मृति देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय, भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर्ण सिंगरे भगवान की जय, जय गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय, श्री मथुरा रानी की जय, समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय, निताय गौर हरि परमानंदे हरि बोल. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories, glories to Shishi Guru Shri Gauranga. Hari Bol Pramanande. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste
Shilatam kanakalaye Shilatam kanakalaye Ito nishinga parato nishinga Nishinga parato nishinga Ayi yato yato yamitato nishinga Yato yato yamitato nishinga Ayin nishinga, hidaye nishinga Ayin nishinga, hidaye nishinga Narashina madim saranam prapade Narashingamadim Saranam Prapade Tavakara Kamala Barenakam Adhuta Singam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadeshare Jaya Jagadeshare Jaya Jagadeshare Tavakara Kamala Pare Nakam Adhuta Singam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadeshare Jaya Jagadeshare Jaya Jagadeshare Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadeshare Jaya Jagadeshare Jaya Jagadeshare Jaya Narasingade, Jaya Narasingade, Jaya Narasingade, Jaya Narasingade. Haribo, Haribo, Gora Haribo, Nitai, Gora Haribo, Nitai. Shingadev Bhagavan ki jai, Bhakta Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Gaur Premanande Haribo. Vindaye Tusideva Priyaye Keshavasya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyvrata Namo Namaha. Vindaye Tusideva Priyaye Keshavasya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyvrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tusideva Priyaye Keshavasya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyvrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tusidevi Maharani ki jai. You want to chant?
Namo Namah.
Namo Namo Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namah.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilashi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilashi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Shitomaya Shayanaloy Taravacha Purnahoy.
Shitomaya Shayanaloy Taravacha Purnahoy.
Vipa Kori Korotare Vrindavanavasi. Vilas, Vilas Kunjariava. Nayane Heriva Sada Jugala Ruparashi.
Nayane Heriva Sada Yugala Ruparasi.
Vedana Dharo Sakir Anugata Koro
Sakira Anugata Koro
Sevari Karadiye Koro Nijarasi
Seva Adi Koro Dare Vrindavanavasi
Zina Krishna Rase Koi Eye Namoraho
Krishna Krishna Dase Koi Hey Vinamura
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi
Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi
Yani Kani Chapa Pani Brahma Jati Kani Cha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmahatya Vidani Cha Tani Tani Pani Santi Adikshana Pade Pade
Yani Kani Chapa Pani Brahma Jati Kani Cha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Tani Tani Chapapani Brahmahatya Tikani Cha Tani Tani Pani Santi Adikshana Pade Pade
Yani Kani Chapa Pani Brahma Jati Kani Cha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Chapapani Brahmahatya Tikani Cha Tani Tani Pani Santi Adikshana Pade Pade
Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Nitagora Haribol, 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 Nitagora Haribol.
Vrindaye Tulsi Devai Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavrataye Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavrataye Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavrataye Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Oh, to us, beloved Krishna, I bow down. Krishna, whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is to also grant me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays, may always swim in love as Shri Radha and Govinda. Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shivati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarya. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahatavagni Nirvapanam Shairakairabhya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Bhaduhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Patipadam Purnam Mitasvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahudanija Sarvasaktis Tatrapita Niyamitak Smarani Nakala Etadrisita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam Jasi Samiha Janina Anuraga China Dapi Suni Chena Tarurapi Sahisnana Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishware Bhavatad Bhakti Rahaitu Ki Tvai Ai Nandatanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Padabkan Kajasti Taduli Sadri Sambichintaya Nayanam Galadas Rudaya Ram Gadarudaya Jira Pulakar Sitam Vapu Kada Tavanamagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayitam Nimesena Chakshasa Pavrasayitam Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahena Me Aslisya Vapadaratam Pinastumam Adasanam Ramahato Karotuva Yata Tata Vavidatu Lampato Mat Pranadatas Tusa Eva Naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharane. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction of humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, Your holy name alone can render all benediction to the living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in the humble state of 9, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more and ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O my Lord. Nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I've been fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna, and he shall remain. Or makes me brokenhearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Bhagavad Gita. Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai. Salakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakha Nibitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pastatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamini Shivasavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Bababumestvam Destas Priya Oma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premapadayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhaktasaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Sudator Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadramadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamanu Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasa Rambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakadasatma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vritesu Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kwanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Kotikamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalabhisasam Tamam Chibangalalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalandriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiranjaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsada Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yatpapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitum Jagadanda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Jayanta Rastam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Busaha Suktarya Meva Nirgana Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Koloka Eva Nivasata Kilakma Bhuto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amenatistan Nam Karamakurod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Benam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantamasesa Bhutam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Jaragunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sadva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Yaprani Nam Prativalam Smaraptam Upetya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nichitamni Tale Chitasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Satesu Tesu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vichasayana Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shastistati Pralaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chichesta Tesa Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasambhutam Apitata Samapaiti Karya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Deeparcha Deva Hita Santanam Abhyupetya Deepayate Vivita Hetu Samanu Dharma Yastadri Geva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalambya Param Smamurtim Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kalavishesho Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Vasmanya Tasma Sakalesha Nijesu Tejasviyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbad Vande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adipurisham Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahi Gaganamabu Vanutisascha Kalastatakma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramuti Rasesa Tejaha Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yas Banda Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Moha Gurugora Vasevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiyakanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Jumabu Mishchintamani Ganama Yito Yamamritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chiranandam Jyoti Param Apitata Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Kshiradi Bhishavati Surabi Vyascha Sumahan Nimesa Dakyova Rachitina Hiya Tripi Samaya Vajay Switadri Vam Tamaham Ihugulakam Ityam Vidantas Te Santakshiti Viracha Rakatipaya Ishwara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Shri Brahmasamita Ki Jai, Shri Guru Vastaka prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Are for my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet, as such a spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. For my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited pastimes of Radhika and Gopi and ways their forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master, as a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So today we're going to hear a little bit more about Lord Nrsingadev and Prahlad Maharaj. 1 second, I have to find it. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 10, verse number 7. Yadidasyasi me kaman varams varadarsabha kamanam hridyasamroham bhavatastu Vrishnevaram yadi. If dasyasi, want to give, me, kamam, anything desirable, varan, as your benediction, tvam, you, varada rishabha, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can give any benediction, kamanam, of all desires for material happiness, hridi, within the core of my heart, asamroham, no growth, bhavata, from you, two, then, vrine, I pray for, varam, such a benediction. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. O my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray for your Lordship that within the core of my heart there will be no material desires. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So this is Canto 7, Chapter 10, verse number 7. These are very, very important verses if we want to understand what are the prayers of a pure devotee. So Prahlad Maharaj is a pure devotee. So what is he asking for? Let's see. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us how to pray for benedictions from the Lord. He said, Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundaram, Kavitam va Jagadisha Kamaya, Mama Janmani Janmanishware, Bhavatad Bhaktira Haitaki Tvai. O my Lord, I do not want from you any amount of wealth, nor many followers, nor a beautiful wife, for these are all materialistic desires. But if I have to ask you for any benediction, I pray that in whatever forms of life I may take my birth, under any circumstances, I will not be bereft of your transcendental devotional service. Devotees are always on the positive platform, in contrast to the Mayavadis, who want to make everything impersonal or void. One cannot remain void, sunyavadi. Rather, one must possess something. Therefore, the devotee, on the positive side, wants to possess something. And this possession is very nicely described by Prahlad Maharaja, who says, if I must take some benediction from you, I pray that within the core of my heart there may be no material desires. The desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not at all material. This is an extremely, extremely important verse. Why? Because what keeps us in the material world are layer upon layer of material desires. And they're unending. They just keep increasing all the time. They get more when you get older than when you were younger, because you have more experience, so you want more things with that experience. Like I remember many years ago, I took one of my kids to Toys R Us. Right? I think they went bankrupt. So it's all full of toys. It was a huge warehouse in somewhere in, I think it was, I forget if it was Factoria or Bellevue or somewhere. It was Bellevue, I think. Yeah. It was a huge factory of or warehouse of toys for kids, right? So my kid at that time, I think she was only about 7 years old, I think. So we get in, and she like was amazed by this, just thousands and thousands of toys, and she ran right away to the first toy she could pick, and she said, "Daddy, I want to have this," and it was only $1.50. I said, "Whew, boy, good thing she didn't pick something really expensive." And I bought it for her. And by the time we went home, she opened it, and it was some junk toy from China, right? So in the first 20 minutes, it was broken already. But she was satisfied. She was satisfied, you see. Now, if I took her when she was 16, she would have refused to go to Toys R Us. She would say, "Take me to the BMW store," right? To buy a convertible BMW, right? The latest model. So you see, when you're younger, you don't really realize so much what things are. But when you get older, the older you get, the more material desires you have, because you have this tremendous exposure to all kinds of nonsense in the world. Right? So here, what is Prahlad Maharaj asking? Like Nrsingadev is forcing him, "You take a benediction from me. I'm very pleased with you. You take a benediction." So what does he say? "Oh my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray from your lordship that within the core of my heart there will be no material desires." This is not the only thing a devotee asks for. Basically, what he's saying is, I want my heart to be purified of material desires, and all I want is your service. That's it. I don't want anything else. I don't need anything else. I'm living very simply, and by the way, Prahlad Maharaj is the king. He was king of the whole universe. And he was king of who? Of the Asuras. He was the king of all the Asuras, and the Asuras vanquished the Devas. And so he became plummeted up to the position of ruler of the universe. Right? This is very interesting. Did you realize that he was the king of the Asuras? Did you know that? Did you know that? You did? Okay. Did you know that? Yeah. Hiranyakashipu. But he assumed that position. Yeah, because his father died young, by the way. So he gets that position. So here we see what is the mindset of a pure devotee. Even though he's king of the universe, you have to realize it's not just king of the earth, he's king of the whole universe. And he's saying, "Please, my Lord, please let there not be any material desire in my heart." So what is he saying? Well, one time Prabhupada said, the only desire of a devotee is, "Please give me more service." That's the only desire. He's not asking for anything else. Because you don't have to ask the Lord for anything. He's in your heart. He knows what you want. When I say not what you want, what you need to continue in devotional service, and he'll supply it. Just like if you live in a temple, you're going to get some little place to sleep. You're going to get prasadam. You're going to get simple clothing. And you're going to have a lot of service. So what do you need actually? Let's look at the homeless people. What do they need? They need somewhere to sleep. So some people just sleep on the sidewalk, and somehow or other sometimes they get a bedspread or some cloth or something. They sleep on it. I mean, we see it all the time when we go on Sankirtan. Or if they're a little bit more, let's say, industrious, they'll get some tarps and they'll make some, or they might buy a tent and they'll put a tent somewhere, and that's a place where they can eat and pass stool and urine, and because they have to eat, and maybe cook something. So they're living, right? But when you become a devotee and you live in the temple, you'll have some place to sleep, you'll have prasadam, you'll have some simple clothing, and you'll have a lot of service, right? So what do you actually need? You have to ask yourself, what do I actually need? Well, the less you have, the more time you have for Krishna consciousness. The more you have, you're like maintaining all those things, and it gets to be very complicated. I mean, we got 3 trucks now. I'm spending half of my time getting the trucks repaired, getting the tabs for the truck, doing this for the truck, doing that for the truck. You know, it's a lot of maintenance, but it's for Krishna consciousness. So here we see what is the prayer of a pure devotee, and these are prayers that we should repeat ourselves on a regular basis. And there are plenty of beautiful prayers by devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you choose just the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, you've already got a plethora of wonderful prayers, and this is one of the best. O my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray from your Lordship that within the core of my heart there will be no material desires. So what does this mean exactly? It means that all he's asking for is service. Because if you have service all the time, that means you don't have material desires. So, and then Lord Chaitanya prays, oh my Lord, I do not want from you any amount of wealth, nor many followers, nor a beautiful wife, for these are all materialistic desires. But if I have to ask you for any benediction, I pray that in whatever forms of life I may take my birth, under any circumstances, I will not be bereft of your transcendental devotional service. So here are 2 prayers, one by Lord Chaitanya and one by Prahlad Maharaj. We should repeat it every day. These are extremely important to fix in our mind and to make it our culture. That is the culture of a devotee, even if he's the king of the whole universe. Even if he's the king of the whole universe. Right? Then the next verse is just as important, and it's very telling. It's very, very telling about the weaknesses of people in this material world. And it says, Indriyani manak prana atma dharma dritir mati grishis tejas smriti satyam yasya nasyanti janmana. You have to excuse me, my voice is hoarse from Sankirtan and then last night's Kirtan. So, but anyway, translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta. I'm sorry. Indriyani, the senses. Mana, the mind. Prana, the life air. Atma, the body. Dharma, religion. Driti, patience. Mati, intelligence. Hri, shyness. Shri, opulence. Teja, strength. Smriti, memory. Satyam, truthfulness. Yasya, of which lusty desires. Nasyanti, are vanquished. Janmana, from the very beginning of birth. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. O my Lord, because of lusty desires from the very beginning of one's birth, the functions of one's senses, mind, life, body, religion, patience, intelligence, shyness, opulence, strength, memory, and truthfulness are vanquished. This is an extremely important verse. Why? Because it says even if you have one material desire, it will poison every quality that you have. One material desire. What happens if you have many material desires? You see, this is a very important verse, especially for leaders of the movement or anyone who's engaged in devotional service with responsibility. One material desire is enough to corrupt every thought, every action, every desire that we have. One. What happens if you have many? This is why the world is in a really bad shape today, because the leaders of the world have plethora or a huge number of material desires. That means that every decision they make, every thought they have, every action they take is going to be contaminated. Okay. So let's hear the purport. Prabhupada says, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Kaman Hrit Rogam. Materialistic life means that one is afflicted by a formidable disease called lusty desire. Liberation means freedom from lusty desires, because it is only due to such desires that one must accept repeated birth and death. This is a huge statement. If we realize what he's saying here, it's monumental. He's saying that these desires, and what is modern publicity, what is modern propaganda all about? Increasing your material desires. In other words, one material desire is enough to corrupt everything you do in your life. And imagine with this barrage, look that word up, B-A-R-R-A-G, this barrage of propaganda and publicity, it's overwhelming. What's it say?
It's a concentrated artillery bombardment over a wide area.
Yeah, we're being bombarded. This is like, bombs are falling on us every day in the form of publicity and propaganda to keep us in the material world. It's not surprising that so many people are in Maya, because they're being bombarded with bombs of falsity, banging in their heads and their ears every day. And here it says, materialistic life means that one is afflicted. Afflicted, look that word out, A-F-F-L-I-C-T-E-D. This means that you are infected seriously. You have a serious disease. It's not only you're going to be infected, you have already been infected, and it's serious. It's a serious sickness. What does it say?
Trouble cause pain or suffering too.
Yeah. And it's painful. And it's suffering, having all these material desires. You never are satisfied. You get something, you say, oh, okay, now I want another thing. I made my first million, now I want my next 100 million. It never ends. See? So it says, materialistic life means that one is afflicted by a formidable disease called lusty desire. Liberation means freedom from lusty desires, because it is only due to such desires that one must accept repeated birth and death. There it is. This is the cause of why we're in this material world, and why we will stay in the material world unless we wake up and realize what's happening to us. If the parent cannot realize what's happening, how are they going to teach the child? If you can't figure out what's happening to you, how can you teach your kid? You see. So these two verses, if you just meditate on these two verses, you will be fully educated in Krishna consciousness. Just these two verses. Canto 10, chapter 10, verse number 7 and number 8. Canto 7, chapter 10, verse number 7 and 8. So now it continues. Materialistic life means that one is afflicted by a formidable disease called lusty desire. Liberation means freedom from lusty desires, because it is only due to such desires that one must accept repeated birth and death. As long as one's lusty desires are unfulfilled, one must take birth after birth to fulfill them. Because of material desires, therefore, one performs various types of activities and receives various types of bodies with which to try to fulfill desires that are never satisfied. There it is. These desires are never satisfied. The only remedy is to take to devotional service, which begins when one is free from all material desires. Now, there's an example here. The example is Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is still alive today. He won't die till the end of, I think, Brahma's life. I'm not sure about that, but he's still alive today, and he's writing Vedas for the next Satya Yuga. Where does he live? He lives in a cave in the Himalayas. He doesn't live in a 5-star hotel with all kinds of servants and this and that. He's living very, very simply in a cave. And, that cave gets really cold in wintertime because it's way up there in Badarik Ashram, which is only open, I think, 2 months a year, because it's so high in the Himalayas that when winter comes, you can't live there. It's too cold. It's freezing. But he lives there all the time. And very, very few people have seen him. One person that actually saw him was Madhavacharya about 1,200 years ago. Was it 1,200 years? Yeah, about 1,200 years or 1,100 years ago. He went all the way up there to show him his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and Vyasadeva approved it. See? So you can see him. It is possible, but you have to be a very, surrendered devotee to be able to see him. Right? So, but there's a man who's the most brilliant person in the whole universe, and look how he's living. That's a sign of intelligence, of super intelligence. The less we have, the more time we have for Krishna. The more we have, the more time we're wasting maintaining all those things. Right? Now, I'm not telling you right now, okay, give everything up and go live in a cave. It's not what I'm telling you. I'm just explaining that it is possible to live like that because we have examples. We have examples. We have Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. We have Raghunath Das Goswami. We have so many people that have assumed this sort of life. Even Lord Chaitanya, he was criticized by a god brother of his guru, who was nonsense. And he saw an ant where Lord Chaitanya was sitting in a little hut. He said, oh, see, there's an ant there. That means you're eating sweets. You're eating too many sweets, right? And this was when Lord Chaitanya was being not forced, but really, they were giving him a lot of prasadam, and he didn't want it all, but they insisted because they were saying to him, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You eat 56 times a day in the temple in Jagannath Puri, so you can eat whatever we're giving you. So and then this person comes and sees that he has all this prasadam in his little hut, and he criticized him. So Lord Chaitanya said, he's right. He said, I'm not going to eat anymore. Right? And it was devastating for the devotees because they wanted to serve him, right? But this envious person comes and criticizes him, and Lord Chaitanya reduced severely what he was eating after that. Right? So anyway, we can see that when one becomes spiritually advanced, they minimize their lifestyle to maximize their time for service. As long as one's lusty desires are unfulfilled, one must take birth after birth to fulfill them. Because of material desires, therefore, one performs various types of activities and receives various types of bodies with which to try to fulfill desires that are never satisfied. The only remedy is to take to devotional service, which begins when one is free from all material desires. Whoa! It begins when you become free of all material desires. So, what does that mean? That we're not Mayavadis. You cannot stop desire, but we change the quality of the desires from desiring for self-aggrandizement, for self-indulgence. Look that word up, self-indulgence. You just don't look it up in the dictionary, just type in self-indulgence, meaning. Then we become we're trapped by Maya. What's it say?
Something done.
Okay. Okay, you would have to look up the word indulgence. Indulgence. Yeah, exactly right. Greedy for themselves. They're not interested in Krishna. They're just interested in themselves. Right? So, it says here, because of material desires, therefore, one performs various types of activities and receives various types of bodies with which to try to fulfill desires that are never satisfied. The only remedy is to take the devotional service, which begins when one is free from all material desires. Anya bilasita sunyam jnana karmadhyana avritam anukulyena krishnana silnam bhaktir uttama. Anya bilasita means material desire, and sunyam means free from. Anya bilasita sunyam, when one is free from all material desires, then you begin devotional service. The spiritual soul has spiritual activities and spiritual desires, as described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mama janmani janmanisware bhavatat bhaktir ahaituki tvai. So there's the word mama, right? We talk about the word mama, right? But this is the correct use of it. He says, all I want is birth after birth to be engaged in your devotional service. That's the real mama. It's not the other mama of Satyanarayana Puja. Do this for me. I want. Dhanam Dehi, Janam Dehi, Rupam Dehi, all these different things. It's for me. So that is selfishness or self-indulgence. It's greedy for oneself. The spirit soul has spiritual activities and spiritual desires as described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mama janmani janmanisware bhavatat bhaktir haituki tvai. Unalloyed devotion to the service of the Lord is the only spiritual desire. There it is. That's what Prabhupada said also. He said the only desire of the devotee is to continue in devotional service. And he said the only thing the devotee asks is, please give me more service. Right? To fulfill this spiritual desire, however, one must be free from all material desires. Desirelessness means freedom from material desires. This is described by Srila Rupa Goswami as anya bilasita sunyam. As soon as one has material desires, one loses his spiritual identity. Then all the paraphernalia of one's life, including one's senses, body, religion, patience, and intelligence, are deviated from one's original Krishna consciousness. See, everything gets affected by even one material desire. Everything gets affected. That's what this verse is saying. Every decision you make, every desire you have, every action you take, they will all be contaminated by just one material desire. And what happens if you have hundreds of material desires? It affects your senses, your body, your religion, your patience, your intelligence, all these things. As soon as one has material desires, one cannot properly use his senses, intelligence, mind, and so on for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mayavadi philosophers want to become impersonal, senseless, and mindless, but that is not possible. So that's their solution to this problem, and it's not viable. V-I-A-B-L-E, look that up. V-I-A-B-L-E. It's not a viable thing. Huh?
Capable of or feasible.
Yeah, it's not feasible to give up all desires. You cannot give up all desires, but you can change your desires, purify them, and desire only to serve Krishna. Say. As soon as one has material desires, one cannot properly use his senses, intelligence, mind, and so on for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mayavadi philosophers want to become impersonal, senseless, and mindless, but that is not possible. The living entity must be living, always existing with desires, ambitions, and so on. These should be purified. These should be purified. However, so that one can desire spiritually and be spiritually ambitious, without material contamination. In every living entity, these propensities exist because he is a living entity. When materially contaminated, however, one is put into the hands of material misery, janma mrityu, jara vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease. That's a symptom that we only have material desires, and therefore we're trapped in this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. In every living entity, these propensities exist because he is a living entity. When materially contaminated, however, one is put into the hands of material misery, janma mrityu, jara vyadi. If one wants to stop repeated birth and death, one must take to the devotional service of the Lord. Sarvapadi vinir muktam, tatparat vena nirmalam. Hishikesha, hishikena, hishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses are purified. So, you say, how am I going to be free of material desires? Well, it's very simple. Just engage in devotional service, which includes coming to class, which includes so many things, and your material desires will go away. That's if you actually chant your rounds every day and follow the 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. If you don't do those things, then even though you might do some of those things, you'll still be, or we will still be, infected by material desires. You have to do all of them, and you have to pay attention to them, not to slink away. You know what a slinky is? You know what a slinky is? Yeah, you put it on the steps, and it goes from one step down to the other step, down to the other step, right? So slink away means you gradually go away from Krishna consciousness by being negligent, not chanting your rounds every day, not coming to class. And these things become habits. You develop the habit of not chanting your rounds. You develop or not chanting all of them. You develop the habit of not coming to class. And it becomes part of you because you slink. You become a slinky. Bloop, 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 bloop. Right? You don't want to be a slinky. You want to be ascending always, going up spiritually, not descending. Okay, so these are just 2 verses of this 7th canto, but everything is in these 2 verses. That's how powerful the Srimad Bhagavatam is. That's how powerful the example of the life of pure devotees are. Here's a man who's king of the whole universe, and he's begging Krishna, if you insist on me taking a benediction, then please clean my heart of all material desires. And let me be engaged always in your service. So now, Prahlad Maharaj at this age is still very young, but he's going to become king of the universe. That's what happens. Just like there's a Brahma, there's a Vivaswan, there's a Varuna, there's a Chandra. These are big, big personalities, but they're all jivas like us. It's not that they are different than us. They have the same problems that we do, but they've perfected themselves by doing devotional service. But they're not completely free because they still are desiring to dominate. Right? So Krishna puts them in this big position. You are Brahma, this secondary creator of the material universe after Krishna. Or you're Vivaswan. You control the sun and the orbits of the sun and the planets. Or you are Varuna. You control all the rivers and oceans and things like that. Or you're Chandra. You control the moon. You see. Or you're Indra. You're the king of all the devas. You see. These are jivas. They're not let's say, different than us. The only difference is they've become highly purified, but not enough to go back to Godhead yet. Not enough to go back to Godhead. And they will make mistakes. Brahma made mistakes. I don't know about Vivaswan, but definitely Indra makes a lot of mistakes, right? But yet, what makes them a demigod is, even if they make a mistake, they're willing to be corrected. That's the difference. Whereas Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, they refuse to be corrected, so they're not devas. But Indra accepts to be directed, therefore he's a deva. That means he's making mistakes, but he's willing to be corrected. So that is training. You learn by making mistakes and then by receiving instructions from bona fide gurus. Okay, so what time is it now? 7:04. Okay, we'll read the next one. Vimunchati yada kamam. Oh my Lord, when a human being is able to give up all the material desires in his mind, he becomes eligible to possess wealth and opulence like yours. Whoa. Whoa. You see? You want to be showered with opulence and wealth? Become a pure devotee. Not that he wants that, but he'll use it all in Krishna's service. He'll use it all in Krishna's service. And the purport says, atheistic men sometimes criticize a devotee by saying, if you do not want to take any benediction from the Lord, and if the servant of the Lord is as opulent as the Lord himself, why do you ask for the benediction of being engaged in the Lord as the Lord's servant? Sridhar Swami comments. So this question was asked in previous times, and someone answered it. Sridhar Swami of the Rudra Sampradaya. He comments, Bhagavat Tvaya Bhagavat Saman Aishvaryaya Bhagavat Va. Becoming as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not mean becoming one with him or equal to him. Although in the spiritual world the servant is equally as opulent as the master. Whoa. This is the difference between the material world and the spiritual world. The servant is as opulent as the master. The servant of the Lord is engaged in the service of the Lord as a servant, friend, father, mother, or conjugal lover, all of whom are equally as opulent as the Lord. This is achintya beda abeda tattva. The master and servant are different, yet equal in opulence. This is the meaning of simultaneous difference from the Supreme Lord and oneness with him. But not oneness, you give up your individuality, you merge into some blob or some some homogeneous slime or something like that. No, you oneness in qualities. So we are oneness in one definite quality, that is eternality, although we don't believe it. Therefore, we remain captured by Maya. If a person accepts that their soul is eternal, and thus you have an eternal relationship with Krishna, who's also eternal, you can become a devotee. But people are trying to convince you that you don't have a soul, you just have a body. That's called empiricism. That's called this modern education. Everything they do, the gym, and the exercises, all for the body. You see these kids running all the time, right, in the streets. What are they doing that for? And then you see their parents also running, right? They're actually reducing their lifespan, especially if you run up hills, because the more breaths, everyone's lifespan is determined by the number of breaths they take. So what do yogis do? They stop breathing. They can live that way for hundreds, even thousands of years. They learn the trick through yoga practice. You close the 9 holes of the body and you catch the air in the throat, the incoming and outgoing air in the throat. And that way you can prolong your life. But if you're like running down the street and up in hills and exercising all the time, you're reducing your lifespan by doing that. Because the number of breaths we take determines the length of the duration of our lifespan. So you see, you're not going to hear this in school. They don't teach anything like this, right? Just like yesterday, something very interesting happened. You want to explain it? Probably you were there. About Devanath?
Yeah.
You can explain it. Go to the microphone and explain it.
Yeah, I was just listening to the conversation. Actually, Devanath Hari Prabhu came and I think you recommended him to for his father.
What did he have in his hands?
He had some beans, those broad beans.
Fava beans.
Fava beans.
Right. So what did he say?
Yeah, actually, you recommended him for his father, and then I think you recommended him for his father.
Who recommended?
You?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then somehow they had interaction.
What was the father's disease?
I don't remember the technical term.
Parkinson's
disease. Yeah.
That's when your hands are shaking, and you can die from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it seems they had some conversation with the doctor, and then the doctor he told him, like, he was searching for that beans for last 10 years
in India.
In India, and he couldn't find it, and he really
why couldn't he find those beans, the fava beans in India?
I remember you mentioned that it's mostly eaten. Muslims eat that, and it's not widely available in the market.
Because the Muslims keep it a secret, especially the Unani the Muslim doctors. They keep it a secret. They only give it to Muslims so that they don't get sick. And there are other things too. Muhammad recommended certain things. I have a list of them, and they'll keep it a secret. So this Hindu Ayurvedic doctor, he comes to see Devanath's father, who he knows is very sick, right? He's got this Parkinson's disease, right? And he sees that he's almost cured. And he says, what's happening, And the father shows him the beans, the fava beans. He said, where did you get these from? He said, he was like shocked. I got it from my son. I want to talk to him right away. It was in the middle of the night, Go ahead.
You're saying 2 a.m. in the morning. He got a call from the doctor, and he ended up speaking to him about 45 minutes.
Yeah, the doctor
called Devanath.
The father calls up his son, Devanath, right? And the doctor talks to him. So, how did you know about these beans? He said, well, my Guru Dev told me. He said, what?
He told me, whoever gave this and just fall at his
Fall at his feet.
Oh, yeah, he said. Yeah, I mean, this is amazing, isn't it? And because the Muslims are keeping it secret, there's a whole bunch of things that Muhammad has recommended for Muslims. They keep it a secret, right? And they only give it to Muslims. And this doctor's living in India where there are, 200 million Muslims? And he doesn't know that they have fava beans. He doesn't know it because they don't tell him, right? And what did he say? He had been looking for them for years, right? Now, how do I know about them? Oh, 2 reasons. One, I lived 1 year in Beirut, Lebanon, which is a Muslim country. Well, it's not completely Muslim. It's half Christian, half Muslim. But there's a lot of Muslims there. And the people in the Middle East eat the fava beans every day. There's 2 things they'll eat every day, especially in Lebanon and Syria. They'll eat hummus tahini, and they'll eat fava bean soup, like a dal soup, right? And that's why they're muscular and they're strong and they're healthy, right? Because these beans are, I mean, you have mung bean. Mung bean also is very, very good for you, right? But the fava bean has certain things in it that mung beans don't have in it. So it has a thing called dopamine, which is a natural chemical, and it can heal Parkinson's disease. So naturopathic doctors know about it also. Whether they recommend it or not, that's another thing. So when he asked me like 6-7 months ago about his father, I told him, you just get fava beans. Because I was growing them. I had fava beans at the farm. And he gave it to his father, and somehow or other, his father asked a Muslim, because I told him, the Muslims eat. So he asked the Muslim, and the Muslim helped him get it from the Unani doctor. And now, he said, 90% his father is healed of the Parkinson's. Okay, so there are many things. I just learning today that the yogis prolong their life by controlling and even stopping their breathing. Did you know that? Did you know that? Partially. Did you know that, Prabhu? Okay. So these type of things are common knowledge, especially if you read Srimad Bhagavatam. It's common knowledge. But do people believe it, or do people want to do it? See, that's the question. But knowledge is there. The only problem is we have to go to the right people to get it. That's all. Okay, so it says here, so Sridhar Maharaj answers this question. He says that becoming one with the Lord doesn't mean you become the Lord, but you share the Lord's qualities, right? The servant of the Lord is engaged in the service of the Lord as a servant, friend, father, mother, or a conjugal lover, all of whom are equally as opulent as the Lord. This is achintya bheda abheda tattva, simultaneous and inconceivable oneness and difference. The master and servant are different, yet equal in opulence. This is the meaning of simultaneous difference from the Supreme Lord and oneness with Him. So you become one with the Lord in possessing wealth and opulence by becoming a pure devotee. But the devotee is not contaminated by the wealth or the opulence because he uses it all in the service of the Lord. This is what people don't understand, and there are many devotees that don't understand it. And I'll talk about that because it's a disease. It is a sickness. And unless we heal that sickness, we'll never really advance spiritually. So I'll stop right there. Are there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
One question from the first verse we discussed is the devotional service begins when one is free from all the material desires. And my understanding was we do devotional service to purify our desires, which is also mentioned at the end of the purport, that when spirit soul renders services, one freed from desires. I would like to understand the difference.
You see some anomaly there, right?
Yes.
How you don't begin devotional service until you become completely purified, but yet we engage in devotional service to become purified, right? Is that what your question is?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah. That just means that your service that you're doing is mixed, but you're on the path of getting purified. That's all. You understand? The service that you're doing now is mixed. And you know what I mean. You come to the temple, you hear all these things, and you do some service, but then you go home and the slippery slope begins. You know what a slippery slope is?
Fall down.
No, you
slowly slide down.
You slide down, right?
Yeah.
So that's what happens. And then you have to come back again to, sort of perk up and get more serious, right? And then again, the slinky, whoop, 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 whoop. Right? So, therefore, it's important to see the value of associating with genuine devotees, because they're helping you go up, and then the whole pressure of the material world is helping you go down. So the more you associate with good devotees, the more chance you have of becoming completely purified. The less you associate with good devotees, and that it also means the less you associate with bad devotees. There are devotees, but who regularly don't follow. Like I know someone, he's this, not someone here. I know someone, he's the son of a very exalted devotee, right? But he has 3 marijuana stores, right? And he knows everything about devotional service, but he doesn't follow anything. You see? So, I mean, you ask him something, he knows a lot of things about Krishna consciousness. He was brought up in Krishna consciousness. His father was a rather big devotee, right? But what happened to him? He can talk to you about Krishna consciousness. He may even chant a little bit of Hare Krishna, but he's got 3 marijuana stores. What does that mean? It means that he's got all these material desires that he cannot control, and he's willing to actually do something very sinful to have money, to satisfy those desires. And it's very sinful to have a marijuana store. You're ruining people's lives, right? So this is what happens, and that's why association is very important. If you associate with good devotees, you will chant your rounds. You will eventually come to class all the time. You will go out on Sankirtan. You will do all these things. And if you don't associate much with good devotees, you'll just go down. Right? So you come to get a little bit of inspiration, and then you go back for a whole week hearing nonsense. So it's very difficult to make spiritual advancement like that. It's got to be regular hearing and chanting. That was what we read 2 days ago about hearing and chanting, Prabhupada's direct words. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj. And also, one clarification is lot of devotees, so-called devotees, they have knowledge, but their intelligence doesn't work. In this case, like person who has 3 marijuana stores and who has knowledge of Krishna consciousness,
a lot of knowledge,
but doesn't apply.
There's a lot of knowledge, but it doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
Because, see, that's what happened. What was the verse today? One material desire is enough to affect everything you do.
Okay.
all that you hear, all that you see, all that you desire, all the actions you perform, it's enough to corrupt all of that, right? One material desire. So what happens if you have many material desires? You're trapped by Maya. You will not make any tangible spiritual advancement. And the only way to stop that is to associate with genuine devotees. The only way. This is not an academic thing. It's not that how much you study, how many degrees you have. You have this degree, that degree. It doesn't mean anything. It all depends on what's going on in here. Right. So if you have a nightclub in there, nobody can see it. What they will see it eventually by your actions. But if there's a nightclub going on in there, then you're completely confused. No matter how many slokas you know or whatever. Okay, so we're finished? Or any
Thank
other
you,
questions? Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Yeah, go ahead.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
Pandamuri Savadana Mate.
Pandamuri Savadana Mate.
Jahara Prasade Vai Ye Bhavatoriya Jai.
Jahara Prasade Vai Ye Bhavatoriya Jai.
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoite.
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoite.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya.
Arana Kori Homane Asha.
Arana Kori Homane Asha.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Yese Utamagati. Jai Prasad Pure Sarva Asha. जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते विधि गाय जहाँ रचरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु लोकेना लोकेरा जीवाना हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पादा छाया हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पादा छाया हे विजय सुशुक्ति भुवाना प्रभु पतित पवना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nittai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gora Hari Bol.
Prabhupada, Prabhupada,